psychology sessions. Earlier we have studied what is mental health disorders. Now, in while we were studying mental health disorder, while we were studying some motivational theories, there was one common topic was there that you have to assess the person. Okay, in also in when we were discussing mental health disorder, the first thing when after case study, what we do is we assess and we standardize the diagnosis. Ki what the person falls in what category, what kind of disorder it is, or if there's a disorder which have a spectrum of disorder, so in that spectrum we studied ki what level of disorder that person is having. Okay, so to know everything about a disorder and to assess a person on a scale which is universal and everyone which we can scale, which is valid and which is reliable for the person, that is psychological assessment comes in time. Okay, so it is testing. Okay, testing of what? Testing of some symptoms could be there, testing of some personality traits could be there. Okay, so this is what we do in psychological assessment. Okay, what psychological assessment provide us, that unseen behavior, unseen thought, unseen emotion, okay, of that person, we can understand that. Okay, while doing a test, a person is pouring his heart out in a way. There are objective tests, there are projective techniques. Okay, so there a person is telling about on his free will. Okay, so the person is somewhere free to answer anything, because there is no right, no wrong in any psychological assessment. Okay, it is a systematic evaluation and a standardized tool which is used to standardize our diagnosis and standardize any kind of disorder or any kind of spectrum we want to explore. From diagnosis to treatment part, it is very important. Okay, so first we understood why it is important in diagnosis part, because it provides us standardized diagnosis. But when we comes to treatment, how it is why it is necessary, why psychological assessment is necessary while treatment? It is necessary because we have to check the growth of that person. Okay, we have to check what have we done, and is it working, is any kind of medication working or not, is any kind of therapy working or not. So that is why it is also involved in treatment part also. Okay, MSc is something which we in time, if to know the conscious and to know the mental state of that person, we used to do MSc a lot. Okay, so data driven, it is very data driven. Everything which is any item which is directly related to the trait or the symptoms we are assessing. On the other hand, data driven, it has a scoring system, it has a standardized system. It is very essential to mental health insights. Okay, if you are a person, there are a lot of tests for your physiological changes, but what about your mind? For mind, there should be an essential test which provide you information which is unseen, which is uncovered, and which is yet to explore. So this is what introduction for our psychological assessment. Why do we test? Okay, it is now we can explain why do we test, because we want to understand behavior, cognition, or emotion. That is why we are testing. Another is used in clinical, educational, organizational, and forensic field. In forensic field, we have to like if there's some case which is undiagnosed. Okay, so in forensic field, the first thing first is to do psychological assessment to get to know the what was happening at that time of mind. Okay, to know the personality, there are tests which can predict the narcissism, the sadism, or the things like this in a person. Okay, so that is why it is used. Clinical settings, we know clinical setting, it is very important. Education setting, there are specific learning disorders, there are specific disorders like conduct disorder and all, where we have to do a behavior checklist which is required to understand why that person is behaving the way he is behaving. Organizational, in if you are working in any workplace, ethics are there. So in any workplace, there is required to assess your employees. Okay, is there like synergy is good or what? So to assess that, there are also tests. Okay, now from like there are tests from intelligence tests to today diverse applications of tests are there. Okay, diverse applications is like first it was used to like do in clinical settings to do intelligence. Intelligence is very required. Why? Because we have to assess IQ of a person. Okay, so intelligence tests we can understand that they are very important, because that is the only means to assess IQ of a person. But now there are diverse approach. You can build a test, you can develop a test, and you can publish it, and it can be used in n number of ways. Okay, so this is what why do we test? Okay, aid in diagnosis. Okay, whereas we already know it provide aid in diagnosis, intervention planning, and tracking progress. Okay, while intervention planning is like if we want to make a intervention plan. Okay, there's some disorder, but there's some comorbidity of another disorder. To check and assess that, we do testing particularly. Okay, specifically for that comorbidity, and if we find it, so intervention can be changed or can be tempered using that. Okay, so there is spectrum of psychological testing. Why there's spectrum of psychological testing? Because there's spectrum of psychological advancement. Okay, psychology is nowadays everywhere. Earlier it used to be a branch of philosophy, earlier it used to be called as philosophy, but understand, wherever philosophy is, there is psychology. Okay, so philosophy is everywhere. That is why the branch of psychology, when they understood that mind and body relation is related to psychology only, so in every field where there is mind and body is involved, there is psychology. So that is why spectrum of psychology is there, and it is also there is also spectrum of psychological testing is there. First are intelligence testings. Intelligence tests are which provide us IQ. Okay, so what they assess? Okay, how they assess IQ? So what intelligence tests do is कि there are a lot of Stanford Binet test, bias is there, Binet Kamat test is there, in Indian setting is that there are MISIC is there. Okay, so Maline's battery is there. So these kind of tests are there. What they do is कि there is a chronological age is fixed for everyone. Okay, you have a chronological age which is going to grow every day, and there is a mental age. Okay, so then the formula is that when we divide the mental age with chronological age and multiply with 100, we get IQ of a person. Okay, so to get mental age, intelligence testing is required. Okay, intelligence test, what intelligence test provide us? It provide us mental age of that person. Okay, along with that, a lot of tests are there, personality tests are there, projective tests are there. But if we are talking about intelligence tests, so along with that, there are tests like DST, which assess development of person. VSMS, which assess social maturity of that kid or that person. Okay, so these tests along with provide us DQ, which is development quotient of that person, social quotient of that person, and along with that we can compare intelligent quotient of that person. Okay, so these are the tests which provide us particularly a data of a child. If we are testing it on a child, that the person how what is his mental age. So according to mental age, we can provide intervention what is required and what is his capability, what are the skills he can do. Okay, according to his mental age. And at the same time, if there is a development delay in that person, we can get to know that also. If there's some social maturity which is absent in that person, so we can provide intervention according to that. So psychological testing provide us a base to create our intervention plan and plan our treatment. At the same time, it provides a standardized diagnostic. Again, there are personality tests. Personality tests are like MMPI, 16PF, MBTI. What personality tests do is there are item correlating with a personality type. Okay, so if you agree on a scale 1 to 5, which is Likert scale, if you agree on that, you have to just tick on objective based question. On the other hand, there are tests which provide projective techniques. Okay, where a person project. Okay, when it is required to complete some picture, complete some sentence, or word association tests are there, which provide projectivity, which is open-ended. Okay, where you don't have to just tick on Likert scale or don't tick it yes or no, but you have to provide your insight on the test. Okay, so these are two kind of tests. Pioneers in psychological testing are Skettle, Meyer-Biggers, Hathaway, etc. Now projective techniques, what we are talking about. Projective techniques like Rorschach. Rorschach has developed a test with 10 ink bolt. Okay, so 10 sheet where there are ink bolt. Okay, some are black and white, some are colorful, some are semi-colored. Okay, so when the person is exposed to that sheet, okay, when seeing the ink bolt, he or she gets some insight, he or she get some wind, and when asked what you see in that ink bolt. Okay, so according to their open-ended question or open-ended answer, we get to know that person that what he is seeing. So there are n number of explanation, and there are n number of ways to assess it, but 2 or 3 assessment which are widely popular are used. Okay. TET is similar kind of thematic apperception type, where similar kind of projective techniques is used when we are just trying to know the unconscious and we are just trying to know the instinct of that person. Okay, so projective techniques majorly provide us unconscious and instinct of that person. On the other hand, we have already studied neuropsychology. So neuropsychological tests are there. Okay, Hasted written battery is there. So in this test, they measure the brain behavior links. Okay, like if you are able to assess the cognitive functions, the emotional functions, the mental processes, they are working good or not, like if there are some abnormalities are there, if there are some flaws are there, to assess that, we'd use the neuropsychological test. Then some test which you have already appeared in. The achievement test, your day-to-day unit testing is the achievement test, what you have learned from your curriculum. Okay, so whatever the test you appear in after learning something is your achievement test, what you have achieved. So it measure your learned skills. In a school subject, in everywhere, wherever you are giving an examination is actually what? It is an achievement test. Okay. On the other hand, there are career tests like aptitude testing, where they assess your what aptitude, predict future ability, what you can do. Okay, what you are capable of doing, that are your career tests, that are known as aptitude tests. Now we have said that now the spectrum of psychological testing is there. Why? Because earlier there was only IQ testing and stuff like that, projective techniques were there, but now there is spectrum. Why? Because you can also develop a test. Okay, and you can standardize it and you can make it relevant for the society. So how a test is made? First, define the construct and purpose of your test. Okay, what you want to study. Okay, are you studying some kind of a personality type? Are you studying some kind of symptoms, some disorder symptoms or something? So first you have to define the construct and purpose of your test. Once you understand what is your purpose of your test, now develop relevant items and questions related to that. Items are the questions. Okay, what we ask to the person, what we are gonna ask to a person. Particularly, I want to assess some kind of intelligence testing, or if I have to assess job satisfaction of a person. So some question related to job satisfaction and some question related to job dissatisfaction should be asked to that person, and on degree, what degree they agree to that statement. Either we can provide a statement where they agree or disagree, or either we can ask a question whether they can say yes or no. Okay, do you involve in this kind of activity in your workplace? Yes, no. Okay, so this is yes, no kind of question. And are you a person who you develop this kind of behavior when someone say you to? So you agree from 0, 1 to 5. Okay, so this is what we can ask. So now we have to develop relevant items related to that. Okay, the number of items could be n number of items could be there. There are tests which with 10 items only, and there are tests with 180 items. Okay, so it can vary. It can vary according to your purpose. Okay, how hard you wanna go and how precision, how much precision do you want? Okay, there are a lot of kind of item relation, you can ask yes no, and you can sometimes put negative statements also. So if there is a random responses if you are getting some random response, to cut off that, we can also put some negative statement in middle. Okay, what is negative statement? What is negative item? Negative item, if there's a particular set in which in Likert scale we are rating from 1 to 5. If there is a negative statement, we'll rate from 5 to 1. If in positive statement, the strongly agrees carry 5 marks. So now in negative items, strongly agree will get 1 mark only. Okay. After developing items, after knowing the construct of her, we do pilot testing on sample group. Okay, that sample group also, particularly the sample group should be a legitimate group, like more than 100, 200, 300 people of all the ethnicities, and there should not be bias while selecting the sample group. It should be random sampling is required, when if you are testing something, or if you are just testing on some special population, so you can provide snowball sampling. Snowball sampling is when you find a particular person of same ethnicity or in group, and you ask him to get to know more samples to get. Okay, so you ask him to get you more samples. Sample are the individual we are testing on. Okay, so pilot testing is done. Pilot testing, now from pilot testing we can do statistical item analysis. Which items are like statistically different and which items are in that. So we can select the mean items, okay, from that, which are like very relevant while testing and which are very validity. Okay, so after that we can build reliability and validity of the test. Okay, is the test reliable, and is the test valid? Okay, we have to provide that, we have to do item analysis, and we have to provide validity and reliability of that test. Revise according to your statistical item analysis, revise, refine based on your result. Okay, whatever the result you are getting from your pilot testing, you have to do what? You have to revise and refine it. Okay, refine it in a manner that it improves your reliability and validity. Refine it in a manner that it will help you standardizing the test. Now, if you are done with refining, now comes the standardization with norms. We will put some norms which are required item statistical analysis, what we have done, what test, retest, or what kind of validity or reliability test we have done on our test, and what are the results which we are getting, what is the interpretation of the various ranges. You can provide range from this range to this range, this is very high, it is very low, it is average or kind of stuff. And standardized norm will provide the how to administer your test. Okay, while standardization, yeah. And for when the standardization is done, you can if you know how to administer that test, for make it easy for everyone to use your test while testing, you can prepare a manual of the test and reproducing the test. Okay, so then the test is reproduced. Now the other people can use that test to do what? To either build another test or to test whatever the test say it is testing. Okay, it can be very confusing while I'm doing just testing. So assessment can be used. Okay, so can you trust the test? To trust the test, there are standardization of the test is there. Uniform rules are there for fair testing. Okay, if uniform rules are there for every ethnicity and everyone, then there is a fair testing of the test. Now reliability is stability. Okay, stability of your test over time. It is testing what is supposed to test. Okay, test retest method we can use. Internal consistency we can use for knowing the reliability. Inter-rater, like there are multiple scorer, we provide to multiple administrator to administer the test, and if they are getting same result, then we can say that their test is reliable. Okay, and validity. What is validity? What the item we are selecting for our test. Our testing, we are covering all the aspect of any thing we supposed to assess in a person. If you are assessing some stress in a person, then your content should be cover all the aspect of stress. Okay, biopsychosocial model of stress we can use according to biological, psychological, and social trait which symptoms which are seen in, which are difficulties which are seen in stress. We have to put it in our item analysis. Okay, so in items the content is valid. Now if we are following a process where everything according to the thing we want to assess, the symptom we want to assess, if that's there, then we can say our content is valid. Now criteria, predict outcomes. Okay, criteria for that, like we have to predict outcomes. If the test is performing the way we want, the person is scoring the way we want, we have the predictive validity. Okay, we are predicting, which is what we are predicting is valid in sense. Why? Because it help in standardized diagnosis. Okay, so if standardized diagnosis is without any predictive outcomes are not there, so it is not providing us a standardized diagnosis. Now construct, measure what it claims to. Okay, if it claims to measure stress, it is measuring stress. Getting it? It is valid. It assess what is needed to assess. Okay, and reliability, we can rely on that test. Whatever the result we are getting, we can rely on. Okay, now every a valid test is always reliable. If you have put content, like if you have done standardization properly, if you have done item analysis properly, if you have done statistical item analysis properly, then the construct of test is very good. The construct of test is something which claims what it claims it do. So now that every valid test, if you have form a valid test, it is reliable. But every reliable test is not valid, because again it can vary from context to context. Okay, in some context it is reliable, but in some context it is not reliable. Getting it? So reliable test doesn't never means to be valid every time. Now, ethics and real life impact. Okay, so now the thing is ki validity and reliability and stuff like standardization, it is very tricky to understand in live class, in online classes. So in live sessions, doubt clearing sessions, you will get to know what it is. Okay, so now for now you have to just understand how a test is formed, what are the application, and why we are testing, how we are testing, what kind of tests are there, what they provide, and this is the only thing which is required to know for now. Now, ethics and real life impacts. Now, from when we started our lectures, where we are like diving into psychological point of view, like different perspective, different subjects and different topics. So ethics will be everywhere. Okay, why ethics will be everywhere? Because now you are in the practice mode. You are not just in learning mode, you are in practice mode. So in everything where we are practicing psychological test, or we are practicing any theory or any kind of therapy associated to psychology, there should be ethics. Okay, there should be ethics which are basically confidentiality. If you are assessing something, you cannot just view of that like this is the result of that person, this person is very anxious. Okay, we cannot publish that. Okay, we have to maintain confidentiality of that person. There in a lot of tests, it is not required to ask for name of that person. Okay, if the demographic profile like sex, age, or demographic profile, economic profile of that person is required, you can ask that. But if he is not comfortable sharing you any information, we cannot ask for it. And if we are asking, we have to ensure that person that all the information we are doing, either for research purpose or diagnosis, will be kept confidential for life. And even if some authority wants, so they need to go with a legal procedure to get the results of that test. Okay, informed consent should be there. You have to debrief that person that this is the test going to assess. Okay, these kind of items are there. You have this much of time. You can answer on your free will. So, and you take consent from that person. He agrees to your test, then you test only. Okay, because there are tests which have some items which can trigger his trauma, which can trigger his PTSD or any anxiety or stuff like that. So we have to ask for a informed consent from our client or any person you are assessing a test. Cultural sensitivity should be there. Okay, if your test should know that it is cultural competency should be there in yourself also, and according to that select your items. Okay, so anyway, it never like it won't affect any kind of culture, or it won't affect any kind of or hurt feeling of any culture. Okay, and responsible interpretation should be there. Okay, whatever your test is testing, the interpretation should be easy, or should be in a manner that interpretation is clear. Okay, if you are decided a range, decide on like testing, pilot testing and every kind, that the range should be same. Okay, you should decide a range which is uniformly acceptable. Okay, which is uniform, which is universal. That kind of interpretation should be there of your testing. Now in digital age, what are the things which are happening in testing and digital age? online assessment are there. Okay, a lot of tests are there where there is thing called we can like there are objective test only. Okay, where you just have to select a Likert scale or yes no answering is there. So on that form, like people create Google Forms also. Okay, so you can like all the items you can put in Google Forms with the options, and you can publish it. Okay, you not publish it, you can share it to someone who you want to take account of. Okay, but it is very convenient. Why? Because now if I am doing a pen paper test, I have to distribute 60 papers. Okay, 60 to 62 papers. Okay, or sometimes 120 papers. Okay, because there are two tests, and I have to check manual. I have to do manual scoring. I have to do everything, every calculation. Then I have to keep the record, and then I have to maintain confidentiality. And but now on Google Forms, every like instead of like the time is very less. Okay, because we are saving a lot of time. The time someone is distributing 160 tests or 60 tests, he is or she is getting 100 of responses, getting it. So this is the difference between online testing and offline testing. Very convenient, but there are ethical concerns. Why? Because if you provide access to another person, if someone have access to your Google account, if somewhere or somehow it got leaked, so it is very ethically concerning. So if you are doing like online testing, make sure you are not getting the email of that person. Okay, don't get email of that person, and the name of that person is not required. If you are asking in a way, then these tests are actually random, and every response is random, and you can go for it. Okay, adaptive testing, personalized experience. Okay, adaptive testing, personalized experience is like when we provide like booklet, or we provide a software or something application to a person which is very personal, which very provide very personalized experience. Okay, similarly when someone is filling a Google form, and when someone is filling a pen paper test is provided by you, but Google form he is filling on its iPad or on his computer or on his phone. So it is a personalized experience. It is a comfortable experience. He can do it in his home. So adaptive testing is there, where we adapt wherever, whatever the situation of that person is, whatever the condition that person required, we can provide testing in that environment. AI is in assessment. Okay, so there are opportunities and risk of AI. Why? Because we know cognitive functioning, and we know neurological functioning, and we are like developing AI on that base. Okay, so yeah, it is it will be very effective, and it will be very like very quick. Okay, and it will be very like, because while like if you are involving Google Forms or technologies like that, it is just providing us scores, or it is just providing us a data. But if we involve AI in it, it can provide us intervention plans, it can provide us interpretation, it can provide us treatment diagnosis, everything it can provide. Okay, also the time person is taking. Okay, if we are doing pen paper tests, so we cannot record what time the person, there are tests which record time of person, but on a particular item how much time he is taken. Okay, so a more insight of that person we can get from AI. But at the same time, there are many risks if we are associating with AI, because you never know if a brain develops. So a brain develop, a behavior develop, and a behavior is what we are dealing with. Okay, so behaviors can be any kind of behavior. It can be right behavior, it can be wrong behavior, it can be harmful behavior. So we cannot trust AI completely while testing. But yeah, if we involve AI while testing, it provides us various responses. It will provide us in-depth analysis of that item. Also, a lot of people using ChatGPT, Gemini to they just put the score of that, and it provides us interpretation and stuff recorded to related to that test. HI, like HR is there, virtual reality is there, eye tracking system, wearables, cognitive testing. So wearables can provide us more in-depth explanation of cognitive testing. Okay, the wearable, like we have to assess cognitive functions. So using the retina formation, the shaking of hands or the shivering, anything, it can record any sensations. There can be wearables which record a lot of information from that person and provide us. So this is what in digital age testing will be like. Okay, there might be possibility, there will be a time when just scan we can just scan a person. Okay, we just can scan a person, we can see what like in MSc we psychologists scan a person, we see if he is tidy, what kind of person he is looking, or like hygiene or that. But yeah, there can be a screening of that person which provide us MSc of that person. Okay, and there are just few simple questions which could be, because what is there in our psychological testing and what is there in our projective techniques and stuff. They are just simple questions which is showed to that person, which is asked to that person, which can be done by anyone. But yeah, in-depth analysis and along with that there are another behavior observation which a human being can only a human being can do. So yeah, still it is a 50-50, it is a dicey track on digital age and testing. Okay, so yeah, now understand, I want you to just understand psychological assessment is very important. Psychological assessment is if you don't want to use, but still you have to use. Why? Because the mediocrity of psychology is psychological testing. If you understand, if you know by case study, you understand what kind of diagnosis could be formed. But still there should be, if you are working in any field, if you are working under any supervisor, if you are working under any clinical expert, or if you are working in any hospital, they want you to provide them a standardized diagnosis which can be only done by assessment and personality or psychological assessment only. So understanding mind is the journey and testing is your map. If you want to understand someone's mind, if you think it is a journey to understand someone's mind, so testing is gonna help you, and testing is the map. So that's all from my side. Now let's meet in next session.